some ways it feels anticlimactic, but we'll try to make it climactic for you. That is a very weird start to the show, no doubt, but I think everybody's a little punchy as Election Day has come to a close, and I'll just tell you, I knew it. Okay, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back tomorrow night at 7:30. A headline, we're not even going to do the rundown. We got too much to do, too little time to do it. Rhode Island elects first female governor. Raimondo defeats Fung Healy. And so we go with 40%, and as promised, Ted Nesi from WPRI.com and Channel 12, who's very, very, TV savvy these days, waves to you now. There you go.
Yeah, I'll get there.
Good to see you, man. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Late night.
Yeah, always is.
Always is.
Always is. Always is. You want to make an overall commentary? Or you want to go race by race?
Well, I think just quickly, three quick things I'm astounded by. Bob Healy's number, I'm sure we'll talk about that. The fact that the Rhode Island Democratic Party had, I think it might be actually its biggest sweeping victory since the 60s, because they got the Providence mayoral too, on a night where the party was absolutely slaughtered coast to coast, including in Massachusetts. So that's astounding. And then third is, as you say, frankly, shouldn't have been a huge surprise to people who were paying attention for the last month. The polls were a decent predictor of what was happening. And, a lot of the races went as those of us who pay attention would have expected.
Well, I think the polls being a decent predictor is on the money. Let's show you the PRI poll from mid-September, which we've shown so many times before, 42-36.
Actually, early October.
Early October, 42-36, with 12% undecided, all of whom went to Bob Healy. Here's the election result. They all went to Bob Healy. Now, there's movement inside those numbers, so you can't say that every single person who said, I'm not sure, in that poll early on went to Bob Healy. Some may have swung in, swung out of a candidate, but for the most part, statistically, they all went to Bob Healy.
I agree. I think, again, I'm still astounded that he got to 22%. I wrote late last night in our analysis for PRI.com that it was like a primal scream, I think, from a lot of voters about how frustrated we're with their choices of Raimondo and Fung and just the state of the state. I think, it looks to me, based on this poll and the other polling we saw, Raimondo and Fung apparently added almost no supporters over the course of the fall campaign, neither of them. And that was always what I saw as the problem for Alan Fung. Gina Raimondo clearly had a problem getting past 40, 41, 42, where she was hanging out in the polls and where she ended up last night. But the problem was there was also never a sign Alan Fung was winning over the people who weren't going to her. And as you say, it looks like almost all of them went to Bob Healy in the end.
Yeah, well, I think that's also accurate. Here's what Gina said to Tim, amongst a whole bunch of things.
We have great people, amazing universities. We're right on the East Coast, great beaches. We have everything we need. And I am going to be a governor that leads the comeback of this great state.
After this, what's next for you? Vacation? What are you doing from here?
I'm ready to work. I've been in
Come on.
No, really, I have been in a job interview for a year. I want the job.
I can appreciate her enthusiasm and the adrenaline that's running there. She'll have a drop-dead moment just like everybody else does after an election, and she'll need a breather, but she's already announcing she'll be transitioning. But she's got to be very careful of being cocky here. At 40%, it's 40%. Sorry for the phone device. 40% is 40%. And
right now she has almost exactly as many votes as Lincoln Chafee won with in 2010.
I predict that she'll do more with it than the current governor has done with it. It's just her thing. But she has been very mouthy about having Washington intentions to too many people. And we'll see what kind of real hands-on type of governorship we have here, what her challenges will be with a much more, at least from this platform reference, a much more conservative Speaker of the House.
I think hubris is a real risk for Gina Raimondo. And one, if she has good advisors, she needs people who can tell her no, or tell her, Gina, you're not the smartest person in the room on this, or you're wrong about this, Gina. Because Gina Raimondo often has been the smartest person in the room so far in her public career.
And I understand in her campaign she's been polarizing. So, I mean, she's had some interesting personnel challenges in that. Alan Fung was stuck, and I hate to break it to all you Fung fans out there, I could pass wind and get 30% in a race like this. Let's see.
As we all know, the challenges in our state are many, and the next governor of our great state of Rhode Island has her work cut out for her starting on day one. No, please, 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 no. Look, it was a good race. You know, I put everything on the table. You know, I went out there and spoke to the voters in their backyards, in their neighborhoods, and the message was resonating with a lot of individuals. Now, we'll see what happens, you know, down the line.
Listen, I mean, you know, I mean that. Alan Fung has a misunderstanding that he was very effective in this race. He was not. If you have a formidable position in the Republican Party, you're going to get 28 to 30%.
I agree. I think you're always. John Carlivali got 39 after spending almost no money.
Yeah. So it was a whole bunch of nothing going on there.
Your phone.
A whole bunch of nothing going on there, and he's going to have to admit it. He got pantsed in the negotiations on debates. He didn't even show up on the radio where he had a comfort zone. Wouldn't debate Bob Healy on the radio. Didn't do, and this is not about just because I'm on the radio, a radio perspective. He seemed to make a bunch of calculation mistakes, and then when it was prime time, game on, he didn't bring much to the table.
I was surprised when that agreement came out, it's not, you know, it doesn't seem to me necessarily that they were forced, the Fung campaign, into signing that agreement to limit public appearances with Raimondo. They seemed as happy about it as they were. And you know, when you're behind, you want free media, you want attention, you want times where maybe the front runner trips up.
Yeah.
And you know, yeah, I think just.
And they better leave the Bob Healy stole the election from us on the bench, because it is.
Oh, I'm hearing it already constantly.
But it's clear that that's not statistically true. That Gina Raimondo was in this number arena. He was in this number arena, and Bob Healy ran his own third-party race. Let's hear what Bob Healy had to say.
The one good thing about today was at the end of it all, throughout the day today, I mean, there was nothing more of a pleasing feeling that people came up and said, you know, I really felt that I had to vote for you. But most people said, oh, you know, you were great on all the debates. The problem is that, you know, we can't waste a vote or this or that, and everybody has a reason.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of zealots for him at the end.
Your show yesterday,
It was unbelievable.
I started to think you'd get 95% based on the caller traffic, and I know it can be off, but there were a lot of people very passionate.
Yeah. Right place, right time. I think you said it right at the beginning. I mean, they just really didn't buy the act of Gina Raimondo and Alan Fung, which makes Gina Raimondo, she better have some pause over this.
Well,
she can win the hearts and minds of this electorate because she will be governor. We'll forget about 40% if she
tries to be the governor of 60, 70% of the state. You know, Lincoln Chafee, among his many failures in his single term as governor, is, I think, because he is constitutionally incapable of it and not good at the communication side of his job, was never able to do things that could win the support. I mean, Chafee's approval rating, the highest it got we ever saw was 38%, and he won with 36. There was never an ability on his part to sway people who weren't with him initially, and he lost others too. I think Raimondo, especially coming right after Chafee, who just had that problem, has to be well aware, and it's very true. She's an ambitious person, like most politicians are. She doesn't want to be a governor who wins with 40 and goes down in flames in a couple of years.
Speaking of governor's races, right next door and in our viewership area for so many, the Massachusetts governor's race was fascinating and a nail-biter all the way to the end. We have a headline on this, or we have data. Yeah, Martha Coakley finally conceded to Charlie Baker late. There was one point when I saw a screen come up, and this was deep into the race, where they had the exact amount of votes. Now, either it was a typo or I'm not sure, but it came up like.
Regardless, it was tight.
It was to the vote.
Yeah, it was. This was a tight race. I think, you know, it seemed to be trending Baker's way in the last week or two. He's the kind of Republican Massachusetts always elects. I mean, it is a striking difference between Charlie Baker and Alan Fung here. Clearly, it's going to be harder for the Fung people to argue, no, blue state Republicans just can't win, because we had a Republican win across. So it's, you know, what did the Baker campaign do differently in its campaigning, in Baker's style, et cetera, that was different from Alan Fung? I mean, again, Alan Fung, I was looking at the numbers today, it looks like he's going to finish with about the same number of votes that John Robitaille had. John Robitaille had no sitting political position. He'd never had elected office before. So there's not much sign Alan Fung grew the base of Republican support almost at all, which is, you know, problematic, obviously, for Republicans when they always start behind.
Well, since you mentioned Republicans, and we don't really have a lot of time, maybe we'll talk about it at the end of the show, but you called the radio show yesterday to remind everybody about the General Assembly's importance. To the Republican Party's credit, they gained 5 seats in the House from 6 to 11, and that actually might be a formidable little player on conservative fiscal issues with a conservative Speaker of the House who may be able to battle some of these progressives, and Gina Raimondo if she stays way out there to the left.
The only Republican who looks particularly good as a political strategist today is Brian Newbury, the House Minority Leader, who always works closely with their candidates and has always been clear. He thinks those are local races, and they have to have good candidates with a base in their districts who work hard and try to avoid the problems that Republicans have at the top of the ticket in Rhode Island.
We'll have to bring some of those district winners in over the next couple of weeks. When we come back, yeah, there was a rumor that there was a mayor's race, too. Stay with us. So it was nip and tuck for a while there in the mayor's race, except everybody knew it wasn't nip and tuck. That was the thing. Dan McGowan, Steve Nielsen, and I from this company and others were at the Hilton at CNC party headquarters last night as the initial results are coming in. He's up 3, he being the mayor. Up 5, up 7. We know underneath the east side ain't in. And this whole thing is going to go crash, right?
Yep.
It was.
Yeah, I mean, it was, again, one of those not that surprising a result. I mean, Buddy Cianci's never been a guy who wins landslides in competitive races. He won by, like, I think 900 votes in 1974 to get in the first time. He won by 300-something votes in 2000 and in 1990 to get in the second time. I mean, he needed a very split ticket, and he ended up in effectively a two-way race.
So I remind you again, same formula. Here's what the poll said from WPRI way back. Pretty much on the money, because that 21% all started to shift to Jorge Elorza, and then Brown, as controversial and interruptive as they were, nailed it. They literally nailed it. So you got to give Jim Marone over there credit for running a fair poll.
I think their Providence polls were okay. It was that statewide poll that was bizarre with the 11
where Providence was weighted in too much.
Right, so Providence was good,
right.
And because Providence was good, the rest of it was wrong.
Right, but they recognized that.
They did. They won't admit it, but they recognized
it. They recognized it and they went back out and repolled it.
Right, but they say it was accurate, the first poll. They still claim Gina was up by 11 points, which I don't believe. I don't believe Gina Raimondo ever had an 11-point lead in
I
this
agree.
race.
That's hooey, and I'll have to catch him on that. But here's what Jorge had to say early on in the evening.
I have enjoyed sharing my vision, our vision of one Providence. One Providence. It's my firm belief that we can only get there with honest leadership, with openness, transparency, and ethics at City Hall.
By the way, if you're scoring at home, Mr. Mayor-elect, that wasn't one Providence last night. That was 2 Providences. That was a, tight match or Cianci lean in 75% of the city, and a 5-1 mauling of Cianci on the east side.
Which also funded Elorza's campaign. The east side rose up in righteous fury.
And by the way, Cianci, while he's saying, yes, I'm going to invite Elorza into my radio show, yes, is suing everybody he can on the third-party money, alleging that there was collusion between Elorza, Mirth York, and others. So,
and we'll see. Board of Elections known for its tough enforcement. They'll be on it.
They'll be, Cianci was gracious.
I can tell you that it was a great experience, and it was a great, great love affair that I have with the city of Providence that will never end, that will continue till the day I die.
One thing about Buddy Cianci is that he loves this city, and no one can deny that. And I thanked him for his efforts. It was a hard-fought campaign, but he was very gracious in defeat.
You know what I find? You know what I hate about politics?
I knew you were going to say this. Yep.
Jorge Elorza never admitted that Cianci loves this city once in that campaign. All right? So you know what? You're as phony as a $3 bill, Jorge, on that. And by the way, don't be insulted, because they all are. They say all these things during an election, and when the election's over, a little bit of the truth comes out in what is some kind of neurotic sympathy or sportsmanship. I'm not sure which. Come on, man.
Yeah, no, and it's different from sports in the sense that Tom Brady doesn't spend the week before he destroys Peyton Manning. saying Peyton Manning's a terrible football player. I hate Peyton Manning. You know, he steals candy from children. And then the next week says he's good. You know, there's respect all through.
But if he
politics.
had said in a major debate, your debate, which was so classic, and even the Messy 10 debate, which was all over the place, buddy, I know you love this city. I'm sure that would have changed the dynamic of this race. An admittance of that, because there was such a fragility around analyzing Buddy Cianci, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway,
in the journal editorials too. I mean, there was, you know, I think the people who were so opposed to Cianci's comeback, and the guy did go to jail for corruption. You just can't put two sides about that. Have to take stock of the fact that 44% of city voters yesterday wanted to bring him back. That's not a rump little group of people in the city. That's almost half the city saying they wanted Buddy Cianci back. They thought Buddy Cianci was the right move. It's a huge, I don't know, wake-up call is probably the wrong word because they don't need to care, I guess, but that's a huge message to the east side that's run the city for quite a number of years, that the rest of the city is not happy with how things have gone.
It was poetic that Harrop's percentage didn't really affect the outcome of the race. That knucklehead going ahead and at the end donating to Elorza and then admitting he's voting for Elorza, I think belied any sincerity he might have been able to bring to the table in terms of financial restructuring ideas that he had, which many people think are plausible, that at some juncture you might need receivership. I think he embarrassed the Republican Party. They ought to shoo him away for good.
He was almost the chairman, too.
Chairman of what?
The state Republican Party. He ran in that race against Mark Smiley.
What a mess that would be, don't you think? I mean, how's that party build
with
a guy that's playing games
Harrop,
like that?
You know, it's funny, Harrop didn't need to do, Harrop was fine, you know, he could have gone through the debates, been, frankly, a surrogate for Elorza, attacking Cianci on stuff, but also keeping a little distance from Elorza, saying the restructuring stuff, you know, but not hurting Elorza. But to go to these steps that almost seem like a joke after a while, and I think to voters it's sort of, it's like the saying nice things about someone you've been saying is a horrible person for months. People like, it's all a game and we're not part of it.
Didn't feel real. Elorza's got a tough challenge.
The city's finances are still very, very precarious. I agree, and I think, you know, he's 37. He's coming in. You know, we don't know who his team is going to be. Angel Taveras leaned heavily on some of his senior staffers to get through very tough times. And Angel Taveras will be the first to admit that the city's, you know, he's mended things as best he could, but, you know, I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see how Jorge Elorza, especially since so much of the Elorza momentum was around stopping Cianci, as opposed to Jorge Elorza has these 6 policy plans that are going to be great.
Here's the thing that I'm not sure of. Is the city so split on everything, or is it just really split on Cianci?
I think it's the former. I think Cianci is just a symbol of the people who feel that the way Providence has been run since Buddy left, and who have felt buffeted by trends that are frankly not the fault of David Cicilline and Angel Taveras, like a huge economic meltdown, high taxes, the roads, all that, feel like the city doesn't work, and there was a feeling that, hey, it worked under Buddy Cianci. We can debate all the live long day how much that was a good economy, how much that was Cianci. But
this is why it's fun to talk to Ted. I think Taveras did the best he could. I think Cicilline left the city in a bad shape and wasn't transparent, and they got a pass.
I don't mean to give him total immunity. I'm just saying I also think, you know, he didn't cause Lehman Brothers to collapse, and you know, he didn't tell, you know, the Fed not to save Lehman.
Not that we know of yet.
True.
Anyway,
we can't get the emails.
There were other races. Stay with us. All right, we got to hustle. The statewide races, Democrats, master lever.
As ever.
Game over. Questions, however, interesting. First question we have here is in Newport. The locals said no, thank you to the casino, while the whole state said sure. What the heck?
1,000 votes too.
Yeah,
not even close.
That was a big one.
That was, and that's not what they were expecting. They thought they had it.
Joe Paolino and Buddy Cianci had a bad night last night. Paolino was chief cheerleader for Cianci. He had his own $900,000 with his partners in Newport. That's a tough night for the old guard of Providence, both in Providence and in Newport. Right?
Agreed. I disagree.
Question 3. Come on, Yos. Well, really? Did you have to do that? You have any explanation for this?
Honestly, no. I thought that might surprise us and pass. I was getting prepared to cover the delegate elections next year and everything. I guess, you know, a lot of people went in not knowing much, and they might have seen some of those black and red reject question 3s. Weren't quite sure it is, but remembered someone said to reject it, and they got rid of it. But you know, and I mean, the Democrats, the unions, you know, were pushing hard against it, and they won the day.
Yeah, well, labor, I think, probably had a lot to do with, I still think, defending the status quo. I get that there were good arguments against it, civil rights protection and the like, but I felt at the end they were fairly specious.
I also thought the best argument against it was the speaker would probably find a way to control it, because you elect the delegates out of the House districts.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it was a chance for an honest, on the sideline conversation about line item veto, maybe runoff elections. Because frankly, I don't think we're ever going to see a majority gubernatorial winner again. Because
Not at this rate.
We got a three-party culture now, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, as long as the Republican Party stays as weak as it's been in the last 2 cycles, you know, unless the Democrats start to gallop ahead, which they haven't, you know, lately, we're going to see, yeah, there'll be always this room for someone like a Healy or a Ken Block.
And then we spent a lot of money. We borrowed a lot of money. To be honest with you, I voted for them yes too, so I'm as guilty as the next one. Your state of mind me on that one. We've got question 3, question 4, $125 million easily for URI's engineering school, and then the arts went easily for $35 million, and then the environment got protected and transit was all paid for. I hope that puts some pressure on the general fund because you've got to finance these bonds and some better decisions are made.
Yeah, the silver lining I was saying to somebody yesterday for people who are worried about is, you know, it is a time of very low interest rates, historically low interest rates. So to the extent the state's planning to borrow a bunch of money at some point, might be better to borrow things now when you can get a cheaper rate than if rates start to go up in the next few years. But yeah, Rhode Islanders love their bond referendums.
All right, final thought?
You know, I think it just shows once again the Democratic Party in Rhode Island is a very, very strong organization for getting elected, partly because it has no shared values. So whether it's, you know, it includes Peter Palumbo, Dan McKee, Gina Raimondo, Sheldon Whitehouse, you know, people with very different opinions on many different things, but they put that D after their name and they win.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Your state of mind. Your state of mind, just sneak it in, 228-1886. You know, we move this little segment around in the show from time to time. We do have a Facebook post here that's kind of interesting. We can race to. Another governor without 50%. We need a runoff. Well, Joel, in order to get a runoff, we needed people to vote yes on question 3 because I don't think anybody's going to vote to do that within the General Assembly. Anywho, what you're going to do. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk to a disgruntled Cianci supporter who says she was muscled on the east side in a big, big way, and then Healy will be here Friday. See you on the radio at noon tomorrow on WPRO. Good night.